Welcome to Grow Money Business, the podcast dedicated to helping business owners grow both their wealth and business on their own terms. Here's your host, Grant Bledsoe.
Hello, everybody. Grant Bledsoe here. Welcome back to Grow Money Business. This week on the show, I want to talk about financial planning process and when it makes sense to hire a professional versus do it yourself when handling your own personal finances and investments and retirement planning and so forth. There's a lot of people out there who are do-it-yourselfers who do a great job handling their own investments and cash flow and debt and taxes and so forth. And that's great. I'm not someone personally who thinks that everyone needs to hire a professional. But what I would suggest is that everyone have some sort of consistent process when handling their financial planning, whether that's working with a professional or handling it on their own. Because if you don't, things can get missed. Families' considerations and values and objectives can get lost, and you can start down a path that you might not necessarily want to go down. And so in this episode of the show, I want to talk about a prudent financial planning process that I think everyone needs to use. And that is everyone, whether you're doing it on your own or hiring a professional, to get the most out of your resources and get to the best long-term financial destination for you and your family. It's been prescribed by the CFP Board. Professional planning firms out there like ours take that process and make minor tweaks and adjustments to it for their own use based on their own clientele and the service they're trying to deliver. And today's episode is all about those things. When it makes sense to hire a professional and the process that I think is important for everyone to use, because by doing so, it will undoubtedly get you to a better long-term destination. I hope you enjoy it.
Hey everyone, I need to interject quickly to remind you all that nothing found in today's episode or any other episode of Grow Money Business should be considered financial, investing, legal, tax, fitness, or even relationship advice. It's content that you're free to use and to deploy on your own terms. And before taking any actions on content found on the show, please do consult with your tax professional, your attorney, or your financial planner. If you don't have a financial planner, head on over to threeoakswealth.com to learn more about what we do in terms of financial planning and investments and how we help clients on an ongoing basis.
This week on the show, I would like to cover process with regard to financial planning and investment management. And this is something that may be a little bit different than most topics we typically cover on the show, but process is super, super important. And probably the best place to start here is just to talk a little bit about whether who might be a good fit for professional financial planning and investment services and who might not be a good fit for professional services. So let's start there. A lot of old school financial salespeople will make the argument that everybody needs some kind of professional, and you can't do it yourself because of all these emotional and behavioral biases that human beings exhibit when we're making investment decisions with our own assets. I'm not in that boat. I don't think that every single person in the United States or around the world who has the means to needs to hire a professional. I think that everybody by and large is trying to do the best they can with their resources. Everybody wants to align their resources for future success financially, long-term growth, preservation, leaving an inheritance to your kids, leaving some for charity, your business interests, whatever the case may be. By and large, what we want to do as humans is align the stuff that we have with the stuff that we want to do, right? The reason that we focus on saving a little bit and maximizing the benefits of our 401k and retirement plan and our investments is because we want to benefit our future selves. We don't want to be destitute when we're 70 and 80 and 90, so we need to put a little bit of money away today. We don't want to live in an apartment forever, so we want to save a little bit of money so that we can buy a house and not be subject to annual rent increases, things like that. We want to benefit our future selves. Therefore, we want to be smart about our finances today. That's pervasive. Pretty much everybody wants that. But you don't necessarily need to hire a professional to do it. the steps that it takes to do that justice, right, to benefit your future self, whatever you want your future self to look like, whatever you want your life to look like, and whatever you want to, what activities you want to do, the people you want to spend your time with, the stuff that you want in the future, it just takes some delicate care and thoughtful planning and decision making. Part of that is spending a little bit less than you earn, putting some money aside, maybe investing that money for long-term growth. Maybe it's through an entrepreneurial activity where you're building value in a business interest. It's probably managing your cash flow and your debt and your tax liabilities. It's probably obtaining appropriate insurance coverage where you're not carrying any outsized risks to yourself or the rest of your family, and or maybe transferring those to an insurance company for an appropriate cost policy premium. You're probably setting up, some estate planning mechanisms to make sure that when you die, your assets are transferred to whatever party you want to receive them in the most efficient and least expensive way. There's a lot to this, right? And some of the stuff that's involved in that, you probably do need to hire a professional for. For example, drawing up a will, drawing up a trust. Do not do that over LegalZoom. That's a state-specific and a locality-specific thing that I would not be comfortable leaving up to some template. So that part you do need to hire a professional for, but the rest of it you can absolutely do on yourself, right? You can file your own taxes. You can use TurboTax or do it yourself. You can understand you can learn about the tax code. You can learn about investing and prudent financial planning for your household, and you can do all that stuff yourself, right? None of it is rocket science. You don't need to go to medical school or obtain a PhD to do it. It's all public information. But to do it justice, right, to squeeze the most juice out of your assets and give you the best chance of realizing whatever you want that future self, future state to look like years down the road. Maybe it's a couple years down the road because you want to buy a house. Maybe it's 30 years down the road when you want to grow and sell a business and then, buy a place in the mountains and go skiing 3-4 times a week. Whatever that looks like, it takes effort. And there's a lot of data that you need to synthesize to do that process justice, to squeeze the most juice out of your assets, optimize all around, and make sure that you're making consistently smart decisions along the way. Right? There's a lot of stuff in the tax code, and it changes every couple of years when our federal legislature and the White House changes from blue to red to blue to red to blue to red. So it takes ongoing effort in monitoring. None of it is so complex that it requires an advanced degree to understand, but there's enough breadth of data that you have to understand in order to understand the rules of the game to do the process justice. So if there are a lot of people out there who are innately interested in this stuff, who want to spend a lot of their time reading up on what's going on in the investment markets, what are the best options for your savings, how much cash do you need to have, what's the best insurance coverage for us, how might we minimize our taxes. If you're into that stuff and you have the time and energy to learn and understand and truly stay on top of it, then you should probably do that yourself. You don't need a professional, right? There are a lot of people who do a great job on their own. They don't need to hire an advisor. That being said, I would think that that's not most people. I think most people are either disinterested in it or are better off focusing on their core interests or their professions. And here's an example of that. Let's say that it's going to take you 30 hours a year to prudently manage all of your finances and your taxes and all of your stuff, right? And you could, let's say you're an attorney and you bill at $500 an hour, okay? So if it's $500 an hour, it's going to take you 30 hours to do it. Then if you were to devote that time to your core profession, $500 an hour multiplied by 30 hours a year, 30 billable hours a year would be $15,000. So if you can hire somebody else to do it for less than $15,000, you're using some operating leverage to free up your time to focus on what's more profitable, right? Your core profession, as opposed to learning stuff that's not inside that core knowledge base and core professional competency. That's a pretty simple example. And maybe you're truly interested in it, and you're comfortable foregoing that $15,000 in potential billable hour revenue because you want to do it yourself. You're interested, and you want to be that close to it, and that's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But from a value perspective, you can probably hire someone to do it for less than $15,000 a year, I would guess, depending on complexity and your own situation. And at that point, it makes sense, because guess what? When you hire a professional whose job it is to look at this stuff all the time across a broad array of households, I know this stuff intuitively because I have the benefit of spending all my professional life learning this stuff. So it takes me less than 30 hours than it would for this hypothetical lawyer. Well, let me put it this way. The lawyer, it might take 30 hours for. I can guarantee I could do it in less because I have the benefit of doing this and having a ton of experience and knowledge in the area. So there are some efficiencies when you farm it out. Yes, you of course pay a fee to hire someone to do it for you. But I think one of the benefits of hiring someone that we often neglect, excuse me, is having an objective party in the room to lead you and potentially your spouse through a consistent process. And that's really what I wanted to focus on today. Not necessarily, whether you should or shouldn't hire a professional for help. Again, everybody wants to get the most out of their resources that they possibly can. They want to set themselves up for future success. You can absolutely do that on your own. But if you can make more money or maybe another way to put it is, if you can hire someone who can deliver more value than the cost of their fee, then it probably makes sense to do that. On the other hand, if you can hire someone and then focus on your own profession or your own interests, whatever they are, and make more money that way, less than it would take you for your time to learn and do it all yourself, that's another pretty good reason to consider hiring someone. This isn't, necessarily a sales pitch for my firm. We're open for business, of course. Reach out to us if you're interested in learning about this. But what I wanted to focus on today is the benefit of having a process alongside this. Because what I see so often is people who are doing it themselves, which, again, a lot of people can do that. Nothing wrong with that. I think often have a inconsistent process for that management. And so often what we see when we take on new clients here is, particularly with spouses come in, and one of the spouses inevitably is more interested in the financial stuff than the other spouse. And so they want to handle things themselves. They want to handle it for the household. That's great. But it's challenging without the help of an objective third party to go through a consistent process where both spouses' interests and needs and preferences for risk and decisions and so forth are accounted for and truly considered when making financial decisions. And I struggle with this too. We don't have a professional. I handle our family's stuff. My wife does a great job with money. She handles the household, cash going in and out, and paying bills and that kind of stuff. She's great with it. But as you can imagine, when we have a decision to make and I feel one way and she feels another way, if I approach her and make an argument for doing it my way, it's not always the most productive conversation, right? When you have it with your spouse, there's all this other baggage and the entirety of your relationship gets brought into it. When you hire a professional, you have an independent, objective third party, hopefully they're objective, third party professional leading you through a process to truly consider both sides and provide objective observations and recommendations. And that's what I wanted to focus on today. Is if you're someone who is handling your finances yourself, it is really important to have some kind of consistent process to consider everybody in the family. And there's a really good framework for that offered by the CFP Board, Certified Financial Planning Board, that I wanted to go over today, and then kind of compare it to what we do here at the firm, just to give you some context. So the CFP Board offers a 7-step financial planning process. And I'm going to go through each of these 7 steps one by one. But before I do that, it's important to know that if you're, for example, I am a certified financial planner, I'm a CFP professional. We're not compelled as practitioners to go through every single step with every single engagement. There are a lot of financial planners out there who work on an hourly basis or maybe a project basis. There are a lot of, like, for example, there are a lot of people out there that focus on student loans. You get out of school with a lot of debt. You have all these federal student loan programs to choose from, these repayment programs, that is. Should you consolidate? Should you refinance? Should you be in pay-as-you-earn or revised pay-as-you-earn or income-based repayment? How does that affect your taxes? There are planners that specialize in that and only offer student loan repayment plans, right? The CFP Board doesn't compel people to also take a look at their investment portfolio and make sure they're not taking too much or too little risk. You can offer standalone stuff. So, but if you're a comprehensive person, you do have a duty and obligation to follow this protocol. So the 7 steps are: number one, when you take on a new client as a CFP professional, you have to go through some kind of interview, some kind of dialogue to understand each client's personal and financial circumstances. Second, you have to identify and explore. Explore is maybe a word I injected there, but you have to at least identify and select short-term and long-term financial goals and objectives. The same thing. I don't know what the difference between a goal and an objective is, to be clear. Number 3, you have to analyze the current course of action and potential alternatives. You have to, number 4, develop one or more recommendations. Number 5, you have to present these recommendations. 6, you have to implement the recommendations that the client's chosen. And number 7, you have to monitor the financial plan and progress toward those goals. That's the 7-step process that the CFP Board presents and requires comprehensive planners to abide by. You can do the modular thing, one topic at a time, without having responsibility to actually implement and monitor the plan. That's totally okay in the eyes of the board. But that process is really sound, right? The CFP Board is the predominant organization in the industry that chimes in on financial planning in general. You have all these other industry regulators. The CFP Board is not a regulator. They maintain and promote this single professional designation. And since planning is becoming so important to financial well-being across the country, and the public is now becoming aware of this, in part by the awareness campaigns that the CFP Board is putting on, this really is the predominant designation in the industry. And it's something that we require our advisors at the firm to have or obtain, and it's really a starting point for a lot of professional careers. So they have a lot of really smart people on the board who've investigated this and have kicked around what a prudent planning process ought to look like. They've made a lot of revisions to these standards and this protocol over the years. And before making those changes, they release them for comment. They get comments back. It's kind of like a legislative process when the IRS makes changes to the tax code. This is a thorough thing, and it's been there's a lot of input by people smarter than me on this. And that being said, it's a really good process to start with. So if you're someone out there that's handling your household finances on your own or with your spouse, try to adhere to some process. That's something that I see more often than not with people who are doing it themselves. Is they do a lot of great analysis, they do all the right stuff, and they're making pretty good decisions, but there is no formalized process that incorporates everybody in the family. And there's a really good book out there. I haven't actually read it yet. It's on my list. It's called The Family Board Meeting. I don't know the author. We'll link to it in the show notes. That presents a process that families can go through to incorporate everyone's interests and basically bring together the family unit in a more cohesive way, right? We're at the end of the year right now. A lot of people are going through, well, what is our travel going to look like next year? What are we trying to do financially? How's our family doing? What are our priorities? This framework that's presented in that book is a really good way, so I've heard, haven't read it yet, to incorporate everybody's in the family, kids, parents, whatever, intentions and desires. And so that's a pretty good starting place. But if you're doing your own planning, I would suggest adhering to some kind of formalized process. And if you're someone that has a written financial plan that you're doing on your own, that's a good thing to incorporate there, is what that process is going to look like and what the milestones are and so on and so forth. Okay. So if you're not sure really what you're doing, or you're not, you feel like you might need some help, not a bad idea to reach out to a professional. There are a lot of professionals out there. I think these days, if I were to suggest what to look for if you're hiring a planner or an advisor, like if somebody in my family came to us and asked what they ought to look for, I would say you probably want someone who checks a couple boxes. They need to be experienced and competent. Obviously, they need to have some experience in people with your specific profile. If you're let's say you're a foreign diplomat with a lot of offshore currency holdings, and you're in the federal retirement plan as a result of that, and maybe you have a business or a trust or something like that in Nicaragua and Panama because of your dealings as a diplomat, there's a very narrow subset of professionals who are going to be able to help you. We wouldn't be able to help you at our firm. That international tax knowledge is something that we don't typically take on because it's super complex. So you want someone who's competent in working with people like you, right? That's a pretty basic qualification. I also think you want to look for a CFP, a certified financial planner. You probably want someone who maybe has additional designations alongside that. Often there are a ton of designations out there, and a lot of them are specific to the clientele that someone works with. I have a bunch of designations. One of them is the CEPA. It stands for Certified Exit Planning Advisor, because we work a lot with business owners and helping them through their transitions and so forth. So you want someone with experience and qualifications working with your profile. You also want someone who's going to be objective and transparent. So what that means is you want to reduce conflicts, or you want to minimize conflicts of interest as much as you possibly can. In my opinion, I think that means you ought to be fee only, where if you engage a professional, that professional's compensation and the professional's firm's conference, the firm at which they work at, their revenue is derived only by fees that clients pay directly. They're not incentivized to pay you a fee to sell you a financial plan, have you pay them a fee for that, and then also collect an insurance commission if you execute the plan and take the recommendations to go buy a variable life policy or something like that. That's a pretty big conflict of interest. Fee only means that you do not collect compensation from anybody but your clients directly. Fee-based means that you might collect compensation from both. If you have insurance licenses, that means that you cannot be fee only, because insurance comes with a commission attached to it. So I hear people say sometimes that I'm like 90% fee only, or I'm like fee only based, or some mix of the two terms. That's not a thing. Being fee only is kind of like being pregnant. You can't be half pregnant, right? You can't be half fee only either. You either are or you are not. It's very black and white. And that's not to denounce professionals who are fee-based or work on a commission basis. There are different ways to get paid and make revenue as a professional, and there are phenomenal advisors and professionals in all walks of life and all revenue models. For my money, if I'm looking for someone for help in these areas, I want them to be fee only. Not to denounce anybody who works under other models. Personally, I think that's important. What's more important than that is being a fiduciary. This is something that is catching a lot of momentum. A lot of people have heard the word fiduciary. I have seen some pretty massive misunderstandings of what that actually means. Being a fiduciary does not mean that you have to guess when the markets are going to go up or down. That's impossible. Being a fiduciary means that if you hire a professional and they are your fiduciary, they must put your interests in front of theirs. And if they do anything that puts their interests in front of yours, you have legal recourse to come after them. Mostly in the industry today, that's done through arbitration. It's not done through the court system. That's what most firms' agreements stipulate, which is fine for the most part. But that's a pretty big misunderstanding by and large. It's super important to have a fiduciary. All it means is that you have legal recourse to come after them if they put their interests in front of yours. If you hire someone that doesn't have a fiduciary responsibility, or maybe they have a fiduciary responsibility some of the time, but not all of the time, that means that you have no legal recourse if they put their interests in front of yours when they're not a fiduciary. So those are the things that I would look for, just basic criteria. You want someone who's experienced and competent, CFP, maybe other designations that are relevant to you and your situation. You probably want them to be fee only, and you definitely want them to be a fiduciary. So the way that we handle it here at our firm is every firm does it a little bit differently. There are a lot of great ways that really creative, unique ways that firms have come up with to deliver a financial planning product or service to their clients. And in the independent advisory space, which is kind of where we sit, I've just seen some really, really great, even artistic stuff out there. Everybody's trying to do something a little bit differently. Like I said, you have your planners out there that focus on student loans. They might do only student loan plans for like $500 a pop. They'll meet with you once or twice, give you recommendations on the student loans. That's it. No ongoing services, no advice or suggestions or review of the other areas of your finances. It's just student loans. That's what they do. The whole firm is geared around that. And that's great. What we do here at our firm is we get people to the best place financially for them based on their values, their family, their intentions, based on their backgrounds with money, what they want their future selves to look like. And we work with predominantly business owners in transition across a number of different industries. And so the way that we handle it at our firm is we do a lot of those first couple steps. And again, the first few steps are, number one, we understand the client's personal and financial circumstances. Number two, we identify and explore and select a few short and long-term financial goals. What we do is we have a quick 30-minute phone call with people just to get to know each other a little bit better. If it's potentially a good fit, then we'll do a complimentary one-page financial plan. Again, this is not the whole comprehensive 7-step ongoing thing. This is just for us to take a look at your stuff and give you some high-level observations and recommendations. So the way it works is we have a 30-minute call. If what we have to say is halfway what you're looking for and what you have to say matches with our target client profile, then we could do a one-page plan. That means that we ask people to upload a few documents, which are dependent on the situation. Usually it's the last couple of years of tax returns, personal and business, investment bank account statements, maybe your social security statement, maybe another item or two, balance sheet, P&L for businesses. You upload that stuff to our secure vault. We take a look at them, and based on our conversation and what we see on the information you upload, we build a one-page plan, which includes statement of financial purpose based on what we've talked about, your objectives, net worth, asset allocation, and our observations and suggestions of how to tackle the problems that you're coming to us with, basically, that we're talking about in that first phone call. So we're not doing a whole lot of deep dive yet. We're just saying, hey, if you're 52, you've had this dry cleaning business for a while, you're starting to burn out, you don't want to do it forever, you've got some employee turnover, your retirement savings are a little bit behind. What do you need to do so you don't have to be stuck working this job for the next 18 years or 20 years or indefinitely? How can you get out as faster without risking running out of money? That's something relatively common. So we take a look at everything and say, well, here's how we would tackle it. We'd strip your personal expenses out of the business, kind of go through the steps of getting that ready for a sale. We'd want to build cash flow in the business. You need to set up a retirement plan, boost the employee retention, get everybody on contracts. You need to create an estate plan. Your insurance coverages need some tweaking. Here's the sequence in which we'd suggest tackling all that stuff, right? So that's the beginning part of the process. We're talking about where you're at, where you want to go, what your values are, why all this stuff is important to you. And when we take on new clients, if they like our help in making all that stuff happen on an ongoing basis, then we onboard them as clients. So we've already done the first couple of steps through the one-page financial plan. And for people who don't think it's a good fit or want to keep, want to take that and do it themselves, that's fine, right? It's a complimentary kind of thing. We send over a PDF of that plan. They can go and execute it on their own. No big deal. But from there, if they want to hire us for help with it, then we onboard them. We have a series of 4 monthly meetings after that. The first one we're onboarding, we're talking about investment accounts, bringing them under our firm's purview, moving money around, giving you demos of our financial planning system, getting you on with our document vault and our system and our file sharing, and so forth. And then we go through the analysis. And typically at our firm, the topics we'll ordinarily cover are cash flow and debt management. We'll have conversations around risk management and potentially insurance coverage, investments, tax planning, of course, retirement planning, estate planning, education for the kids, grandkids, whomever, if that's relevant, and what's going on in the business. So the way we tackle that is, and again, some firms will have a hard sequence of how they tackle all these. They'll do investments first, and then they'll do taxes, and then they'll do cash. The way we handle it is in that one-page plan, we prioritize the sequence based on what's going on with our clients. So if they're coming to us with a specific tax issue, hey, we need to get this thing in place so that we can, like for example, the pass-through entity tax, or otherwise known as the SALT deduction workaround, or in a backdoor Roth conversion, we need to get this done by this date. Well, we're going to prioritize the taxes first, but then we're going to collaborate on the sequence in which we cover the rest of the stuff so that the whole unit and all the finances are optimized and aligned and propelling our clients toward wherever it is they want to go long term, based on our discovery and our exploration of some of their short and long-term goals. So we have, again, we do this one-page plan. We have 4 monthly meetings after that. The first is the onboarding meeting. The subsequent 3 are working through those all those topics as I mentioned them. We're reviewing cash flow. We're identifying how much we need in an emergency fund. Where should that cash be parked? How much cash do you need to keep in the business? How frequently are you distributing cash to yourself? How is it coming out? Is it W-2 salary? Is it distribution? Are you should you be taxed as an S corp? Perhaps we're looking at entity structure. Does a C corp make sense? LLC? All this stuff in order of priority, and that covers really the next couple steps of the CFP's procedural process for delivering planning, which is develop one or more recommendations, present the recommendations, and then go from there. And so over these next couple meetings, we're reviewing, analyzing, we're presenting our observations and recommendations across the board based on priority. From that point on, clients fall into our ongoing service cycle. We see them 2 or 3 times a year. In between that, if stuff comes up, people call us, people email, we get together as we need to. But for the most part, of those 6 to 8 topics that I rattled off a minute ago, cash flow, taxes, investments, retirement, risk management and insurance, estate planning, business, education, we tackle them, we review and monitor the plan based on the calendar year, because it makes more sense to cover cash flow and spending needs in Q1, Q2 when we get together when we're a little earlier in the year. We also review investment allocation. We review the estate plan. Q3, Q4 gets around. We do tax projections for people. We cover risk management and insurance because it'll coincide with open enrollment for a lot of people. We review the education plan at that time because people are going back to school in the fall and it's kind of front of mind. So typically we're doing the monitoring. The implementation occurs after we get through these first few meetings, and then the monitoring occurs on an ongoing basis based on the calendar year and again based on priority. So I wanted to walk through that in the episode today because I think that a lot of people out there are maybe under prioritizing process in financial planning. And one of the huge benefits of hiring a professional is you have someone who's got some experience and delivered this service across a bunch of different clients and has some experience testing out different methods in which they administer this. Personally, we've gone through in my firm a bunch of different permutations of what I just described. We used to do one-time projects for people. We used to have all sorts of different processes in the early years that we would use to deliver the service, and they're all good. I think we did good, usually great work for our clients. But after going through it hundreds of times, we've really been able to zero in on the process that truly gets people to the best destination for them. So if you're someone out there who's doing this on your own, I implore you, I urge you to incorporate some kind of formalized process along with the plan you are putting to use on your own. And if you're not doing it on your own, or maybe looking for a professional, like I say, we're open. Head over to threeoakswealth.com and book a time we can talk about it. But find a professional whose process aligns with what you're trying to get out of the engagement and aligns with you personally, right? Personal fit is a big deal when you hire a professional, as is the process that we use. You have to feel good about it when you go into one of these engagements. And we've talked to a lot of people who are, it's just not the right fit. It's no big deal. The guy down the street or maybe in another state who likes to work virtually could be just as competent, have the exact same skills, and just be a better personality fit or a better process fit. So that's what I wanted to highlight today. Again, not to beat a dead horse too much, not every single person needs to hire a professional, but if you don't have the interest and time and capacity to synthesize a whole bunch of information and truly stay on top of this, you probably are better off hiring a professional who's a good match for your needs. Because if you don't, you're going to miss. And here's an example of that. We have a new omnibus spending bill that looks like it's going to be passed. By the time this is published, it probably has been passed. And it's got some changes in the tax code. I haven't gone through all the details yet. It's like another one of these multi-thousand page bills, I think. But the outlets where we learn this stuff from will do all the hard work of reading through the bill, and then we'll take away the stuff that we truly need to know. And RMD age looks like it's going to get kicked out into the mid-70s perhaps. There are some changes to simple and 401k plans and the possibilities for structuring them. It's that kind of stuff that we're compelled to stay on top of. So if that's not truly of interest to you, or you simply don't have the capacity to read these bills and understand how changes might affect your plan, you probably are better off hiring a professional that aligns with your personality and your needs. Okay, that's it for today. Hope this was enjoyable and somewhat useful, and I will talk to you all again soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Grow Money Business, the podcast dedicated to helping business owners grow both their wealth and business on their own terms. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you digest podcasts to ensure you don't miss out on future episodes and announcements. And feel free to submit questions to growmoneybusiness.com.